This has to be one of the most iconic, massive yet unknown demolitions that took place in the USA 24 years ago. Do you know the story behind this building, why it was demolished, and why it made records? Stay tuned to find out. Before we answer all these questions, hit the subscribe button and comment "Building Dusted." One of our first 1,000 subscribers gets $300. On October 24, 1998, at 5:47 p.m., Detroit Mayor Dennis Archer hit a button to send the JL Hudson Department Store plummeting into the history books. Only Macy's anchor store in New York had more square footage than Hudson, which was the tallest department store in the nation. Through the 1970s, it controlled the city's retail market before shutting down in 1983. Taking down such a big building was no joke. It took 24 days for CDI's 12-person loading crew to place 4,118 different charges in 1,100 different locations on columns on the complex's 9 levels. In CDI's implosion initiation system, more than 36,000 feet of detonating cord and 4,512 non-electric delay elements were installed. Some were used to create the 36 primary implosion sequence, and another 216 micro-delays were used to reduce the detonation overpressure from the 2,728 pounds of explosives that would be detonated during the demolition. Nobody had ever seen an implosion that large in the city of Detroit, so when it was happening, thousands of people came to see it. The entire area was enveloped in a huge cloud of dust suddenly, which drifted down the woods towards the Detroit River. This store used to be the tallest department store in the entire world. Only Macy's Herald Square in New York City was bigger than it in terms of department store buildings across the country. Prior to the unfinished Mina Plaza 1 in Abu Dhabi collapsing in 2020, it was the tallest building to undergo a controlled implosion and the second tallest overall. After the Sears Merchandise Center in Philadelphia, which collapsed in 1994, it was the second largest structure to experience a controlled implosion. It had become as closely associated with Christmas and fashion over the years as Detroit had been. The enormous department store at Woodward and Gratiot Avenues, which grew alongside Motor City until it was the tallest in the world, was absolutely massive. When it had finished expanding, the size of the store was almost unbelievable. 32 floors made up the store's layout, 25 full floors, 2 half floors, a mezzanine, and 4 basements. When the Panic of 1873 hit, Joseph Lothian Hudson and his father were managing a men's clothing shop in the Michigan lumber town of Ionia. Customers of the shuttered sawmills were unable to pay their bills. Then Hudson's dad passed away. Hudson declared bankruptcy 3 years later and paid his creditors 60 cents on the dollar. Hudson picked himself up and began again in Detroit. Hudson opened his first store on the first floor of the previous Detroit Opera House on April 2, 1881. He was so prosperous in 1888 that he tracked down every creditor he had underpaid in the bankruptcy proceedings 12 years earlier, paid them in full, plus compound interest. He unveiled what would eventually be the behemoth's first section in 1891. For opening so far north of Jefferson Avenue, the center of the city's commercial district at the time, many people believed Hudson was a fool. Well, he wasn't, clearly. Moving back to the demolition, it was one of the most challenging projects that the CDI had undertaken. If you liked the video so far, don't forget to subscribe and enter the giveaway, and stick around till the end. In the words of Marc Loiseau, the company's president, it was the greatest dynamic structural control challenge that the CDI had ever encountered. In addition to being surrounded on 3 sides by unkempt turn-of-the-century buildings with large sandcast glass windows that occasionally broke in strong winds, Hudson was surrounded on 4 sides by streets that were home to vital infrastructure. Last but not least, Detroit's elevated people mover ran parallel to the structure's 439-foot east face, just 15 feet away. At the end of it all, the venerable Detroit department store was reduced to a pile of debris that stood up to 60 feet tall and measured an average of 35 feet high when the smoke cleared.